ChatGerry, The Physics of Life, Edition vs. Multiplication, number 1643, 5/15/2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, Category Self-Reflection, Learning and Life Philosophy. I woke up around 5 a.m. this morning in Honolulu, Hawaii. After briefly waking up, I fell asleep and had a vivid dream about one of my old classmates from the University of Iowa who later entered MIT around the same time as me in 1972. The dream was not imaginary because the story truly happened over the past 50 years. However, inside the dream, my brain was trying to understand a deeper question. Why did two students from similar academic backgrounds end up with such dramatically different life trajectories after waking again around 6 a.m.? I spent nearly 20 minutes discussing this idea with an AI tool, trying to find the clearest and simplest metaphorical explanation. At first, I used the analogy of air conditioning systems connected in parallel versus series. However, that engineering analogy quickly became confusing because real-life systems involve thermodynamics, voltage, current, and power equations. Eventually, both A and I understood what I was really trying to describe. I was not discussing air conditioners at all. I was discussing human life. More specifically, I was trying to describe the difference between additive growth and multiplicative growth throughout a human lifetime, what I now call the physics of life. Back in the early 1970s, my classmate and I both entered MIT. He was academically intelligent and highly specialized in aerospace engineering. He completed his relatively quickly and later worked for major aerospace companies. Eventually became a senior engineer and later a technical fellow. That was already a respectable and successful engineering career. However, my own path gradually became very different. I was never interested in simply finishing courses quickly. I wanted to understand the deeper structure behind knowledge itself. I slowly discovered that different disciplines were not isolated from one another. Instead, they continuously interacted with and reinforced each other. Over the next 6 decades, I expanded into many additional fields, including mathematics, physics, engineering, computer science, artificial intelligence, business management, psychology, pathophysiology, behavioral science, food science, and eventually biomedicine and mortality diseases. In total, I spent 44 years of adult life studying, 18 years on campuses earning 6 degrees, and another 26 years of LF study across a total of 12 academic disciplines. That is why I call myself a professional student. At the same time, I worked with unusually high intensity during many years in Silicon Valley. I worked nearly 100 hours per week continuously for decades while building technology companies and relay architecture engineering products. Then, around 1995, after the IPO of my semiconductor chip AI design software company, my old classmate and I met for lunch together in Silicon Valley. During that lunch conversation, he asked me about my annual salary, which is actually a highly unusual question among Americans. At that time, my annual salary alone was approximately $8.3 million, not including the value of my company stock holdings. His own annual salary was approximately $83,000. He became shocked and asked me, "How can that happen?" "That is not fair," I answered honestly. I told him that he became an excellent specialist in one field, while I continuously expanded into many fields while simultaneously pushing myself far beyond normal working intensity. Then I told him something that stayed inside my mind for many years afterward. Your academic and professional growth was mostly additive. Mine became multiplicative throughout my life. Many people experience mostly additive growth. They learn one skill after another. They earn one degree after another. They complete one task after another. This resembles 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 8. The total becomes larger, but each component remains relatively independent. However, some forms of human development behave very differently. The human brain itself functions more like an interacting nonlinear network. Knowledge from different fields can reinforce one another recursively over time. That resembles multiplication. 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 equals 16. This was much closer to my own life experience. Mathematics amplified physics. Physics amplified engineering. Engineering amplified artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence amplified business strategy. Psychology amplified leadership. Medicine amplified my understanding of human suffering and biomedical systems. Over decades, these fields did not remain separate. They continuously reinforced one another. This eventually created nonlinear divergence in life trajectory. That is the key point. Small differences early in life may appear insignificant, however. Deeply compounded effort over many decades eventually creates very large separation in outcomes. This is similar to a concave upward curve in mathematics or compound interest in finance. I eventually tried to simplify this idea into a very rough life physics equation. Reward ratio equals academic field ratio x weekly working hour ratio x product contribution ratio. In my rough comparison, 12 halves x 150ths x 20 to 0.5 equals 96, approximately 100. Interestingly, my actual salary ratio in 1995 happened to be close to 100x. Of course, I understand this numerical match was partly accidental. Human life is far more complicated than any simple equation. However, conceptually, I still believe long-term accomplishment behaves more like a multiplicative system than an additive system. This ideal later became even more important during my medical research years. After suffering from obesity, diabetes, heart attacks, kidney disease, neuropathy, retinopathy, and eventually hemorrhagic stroke, I realized the same multiplication principle also applied to health recovery. Walking amplified metabolic stability, food control amplified glucose control, glucose control amplified vascular stability. Sleep amplified recovery, continuous medical learning amplified decision quality, long-term discipline amplified everything together. No single factor alone saved my life. However, the interaction of all factors over 17 years gradually changed the trajectory of my biomedical system. To me, this was not a miracle. It was mathematics, physics, engineering, and systems interaction. Looking back now at age 79.5, I no longer believe intelligence alone determines human destiny. Intelligence is important, but intelligence without discipline, persistence, ambition, emotional endurance, work intensity, sacrifice, long-term vision, and continuous learning often produces only limited additive growth. Modern society encourages shortcuts and rapid rewards. Social media encourages fragmented thinking and superficial success. However, real accomplishment usually develops slowly and invisibly for many years before nonlinear diverging finally appears. That is true in business, in medicine, in health recovery, and in life itself. Perhaps this is the deeper meaning behind what I call the physics of life. In life, there are very few shortcuts. God is fair. Over long periods of time, people usually receive outcomes reflecting the multiplication of their effort, discipline, courage, persistence, sacrifice, and long-term commitment. For me, the true value of knowledge is not the degree itself. The true value is the ability to apply knowledge to create something useful for human society. That has been the real purpose of my life journey. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.